Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special call meeting of the Danville City Commission. This evening, Tuesday, June 22nd, the hour is 5:30, and I call us to order. We have three items on the agenda. Item one is the first reading of ordinance number 1969. Item two is the first reading of ordinance number 1970. Item 1969 is for the budget for this coming fiscal year. Item two is with respect to the alcohol regulatory fee for the coming fiscal year. And item three is executive session for personnel pursuant to KRS 61.810(1)F, followed by any action if necessary. With that, we will begin with, I guess the appropriate thing would be to have a motion and a second to open the floor for discussion on the budget. Do I hear a motion?
I move for approval of the first reading of ordinance 1969.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardle, second by Commissioner Terry. We are in discussion. Mr. City Manager?
I really don't have a lot to add. We will describe the budget in a cover letter. We've not been able to put that together yet. We'll try to do that before the second reading so that you have that. And no new taxes. Again, we do contained in the budget is your streetscape project funding, your parks development funding, the wastewater plant upgrade, not expansion yet, phase one, which is your renovation upgrade, and your normal capital, including one fire truck. Replacing, I want to say, 12, engine 12s, maybe.
One of those.
In addition to that, on the utility side, so we've attached the organizational chart for changes in personnel. We'll go to there's a list near the back that has words that are
What do they look like?
more of a list,
I like the
not
pictures
the
personally.
table. The table is a reflection of the overall changes. What is contained in the organizational chart are finance department restructure, CFO positions eliminated. You have a finance director, which is then other revised positions consistent with what we find in KLC's guide, which includes accounts payable, purchasing agent, an accountant, a data entry clerk, which is would be a transfer. As we get into the budget, we'll move that position under a finance director once hired. That includes the collection of the business license and your insurance premium tax, which are finance transaction items, not enforcement items. The enforcement items will move under the police department as contained in the organizational chart. We can look at that if you want to. It's 2 pages before that, which is the police department's organizational chart. Right now, we have an assistant chief of operations, which will have patrol and investigations. Then you have communications inside the police department. You have the administration of that, and then dispatch. Then you have enforcement inside of the police department, which will be your ABC control, your code enforcement, and your parking enforcement. The chief, and I did talk a little bit, there is a need for some future assistant chief of administration, which would include your fleet and equipment, your training and recruiting, and then community outreach. We do believe there's an opportunity with the police department to be more engaged in the community. And that's something we'll continue to talk about together, and at some point, maybe we can propose that. That position, too, could easily serve as a transition for other functions if you need to move them around within the department over the course of time, such as, it's easy to point to parking. So if parking needed to be under an assistant chief, if ABC became too much of a burden for one position, you could always do that, things like that within the department. So then the enforcement actions out of code enforcement stay with code enforcement. So liens, things like that, parking fines stay with code enforcement. The actions that are transactional in nature tied to the city's finances go to the finance department, which is your business license, like I said, and your insurance premium tax, for example, your relationship with your occupational taxes at the county, your net profits, et cetera. Building and maintenance worker, we're moving to engineering because of that is facilities. The utility admin, we are creating the utility admin department of known and measurable, including the administration of the utility billing and collection, technical support for the utility, such as your SCADA system, and then also we are adding an electrician position to the city. We've not had that before. We do think that's an opportunity to save quite a bit of money over the course of time, especially if we can train them up for the unique things that are within a utility instead of just simple electrical work. IT, then because we are adding the technology support to the utility admin, we are maintaining the same number of employees within IT, which means you are a net add of a network administrator. I want to say that's the position title. I could actually have that confused. Let's double check that since I'm network technician, I'm sorry. That should say network technician. Then the police department, we're adding 3 police officers. You're adding 1 dispatcher to communications, and you're adding 3 full-time firefighters, converting the part-time pay to full-time salary. So those are the big highlights of the budget. And if you have any more questions, I guess we'll be happy to talk about it at length.
Any questions or comments?
I was gonna, this is just from my own, out of my own curiosity, I suppose. Do other cities our size have a CFO?
Typically not.
They do not. Okay.
Typically not. You're right. So you can talk about that a little bit. As you go through, the description I've used is Perryville, for example. Starting with Perryville, it's very common that you have a city clerk / city treasurer, same job, same position. As you move into larger cities, take Stanford, it's not uncommon that you have a city clerk, city treasurer as 2 different positions. Then ultimately, you end up in a situation like Louisville where you may have a CFO where it's a merged government, right? In between is places like Danville where you typically see a finance director with the positions designated separately from that, not a city treasurer, right?
Okay. Well, I assumed that you had done.
So it really
research on
goes,
that and
it
talked to
goes,
them.
it goes city clerk, city treasurer, then a finance director, and then ultimately from there, when you get into a larger city, it can take on any form, really.
Thank you.
And the population transition tends to be around 20,000. We're a little small for that, to be honest with you, before you still see that demand for the larger transition. Yeah.
I guess I kind of see it a little differently. For the public's benefit, the budget as proposed for this year has appropriations of $69,376,900.
Mm-hmm.
Any way you slice or dice it, that's big business. Mm-hmm. And we may not be there in terms of 17,000, but I'd be willing to bet you that most communities, 17,000, don't have that number as their fiscal year budget. And I just want to make sure, I want to be comfortable knowing where we are, knowing what kind of projections for the future look like. You've done a great job so far in explaining debt service to us, giving us that idea. That's great clarity. But if you're going to do your job, you've got to relinquish that to somebody somehow. Mm-hmm. Now, whether you want to subcontract that out, that's your call. But I do think we need to make sure we've got somebody that is much higher skill set than just of a transactional nature.
I totally agree with that. What we've talked about for a city our size, it is probably most economical to outsource some of that finite advisory role, the roles, I guess. The finance director augments your day-to-day transactions and ensures that your reporting's done, ensures that you're transparent in your transactions and those things, and make sure your financial policies are adhered to. And then your more larger concern advisory is, in my opinion, can be outsourced to a third party to look over all of us, right? To look over our shoulder, that's indiscriminate, that is not subject to department head say, man, give me $200 more, you know, that kind of thing for this item. You know, let's look at that a little bit more indiscriminately, and for me, that's probably gives me more confidence.
And I'm good with that because that's
Yeah.
much more economical than hiring somebody and taking on the associated costs.
Well, and when I'm talking about a city our size, there's a transition where that role may come in-house.
Right.
But so when I'm saying we're a little bit small for that being a full-time position, right? That's really an outsourced role at this point for a city our size. It still needs to happen. What I'd like to do is have that occur on a monthly basis so that by the time you get to the audit's very quickly done rather than 2 months or
Yeah.
3.
I hope, and I'm sure you will, if we go this route, which I think makes sense to me, find out it's not working, that we go back sooner rather than later. I mean, don't let it get ugly, and I'm sure you won't, so.
Yeah. Well, we'll get caught up and get organized fully as we're trying to get things like this behind. I mean, the organization as a whole will get caught up, and, we'll be willing to change as necessary, that's for sure. You have to be.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
I have just a real quick, just want to thank Earl and the department heads and whoever else was a part of doing this budget. I know it's your first one. I think it's a really, really good budget. It's diverse, and it addresses some of the things people have been asking us about for a long time. And I'm anxious for us to get started on those. And it does it without any additional revenue requests from citizens. So I think you did a great job. I appreciate it.
I want to echo that. Certainly the most comprehensive budget that I have seen in 6 years. So thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, Chair will call the question. Roll call, Madam Clerk, and if you want to read the ordinance, please do.
Well, before I do that, I've been told that we can take public comments if there are any.
Please, yes, thank you. Ms. Brown.
Here comes the public.
So glad. With you coming to the microphone, I feel normal again.
Me too. Is this, I don't think, is this on?
It is.
Yay. Okay, this has to do with the budget and communication. And the part of the budget is $4.3 million for the streetscape. And Commissioner Terry did point out at the last city commission meeting that that was one of the considerations in the downtown master plan. And you all have been hard at work, and so has the staff, but I think the public is a little behind on communication, and I'm not sure that they have any idea about the downtown master plan, much less anything about streetscape. So my thought is that perhaps, and I know you're not going to do it tomorrow, but my thought is that maybe we need to bring you need to bring the public up to date on some of this. So anyway, that was my thought. I
Thank you.
And I thank you for being so diligent during COVID, all of you and the staff, and going on with the city business. That was very important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your comments because I have suggested to our city manager that he bring on someone to tell our story for us, because we're too busy creating the story that we don't share it. And we have a wonderful way to share it because we've got addresses on water customers, so we could very easily get it out and put it on the website and put it on email, and we do need to tell our story. And you've given a great example. I agree with you.
And now that we're through the budget process, I would like to see the master plan, at least like once a month, just for discussion or update or whatever.
Anything else?
That's all. This is the first reading of ordinance number 1969, an ordinance of the City of Danville, Kentucky, adopting the annual budget for the fiscal year 7/1/2021 through 6/30/2022 by appropriating funds for the operation of city government. Commissioner Caudle,
Yes.
Commissioner Terry,
Yes.
Mayor Paris.
Yes.
Commissioner Holland.
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins.
Yes, ma'am.
Item 2 is the first reading of ordinance number 1970. This is the alcohol regulatory fee for the fiscal year 21-22. Do I hear a motion for that first reading?
I'll move for approval of the first reading of ordinance number 1970.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Holland, thank you. We are in discussion. Mr. City Manager, you want to address this in any way?
Now, this is a standard confirmation of the license and fees tied to your alcohol laws, I guess, and then the development of the revenue tied to the enforcement.
These are the same fees that they've been for how long? Ever since we
Since we did it.
2001?
8 or 11 years, whatever that
11.
number is, yeah.
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 Two.
Yep.
Well,
One or
that
two,
was,
yeah, I can't
that was
remember.
drink sales, and then this also addresses the package sales.
5% gross sales on alcoholic beverages sold by the drink. Retails, packaged distilled spirits, 4% gross sales, and then license of 3% for retail. Income statements attached.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Chair will call the question and for the vote. Madam Clerk?
This is the first reading of ordinance number 1970, an ordinance establishing the regulatory license fee for the sale of alcoholic beverages in the city of Danville for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. Commissioner Terry,
Yes.
Mayor Paris,
Yes.
Commissioner Holland,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Caudle.
Yes.
Item 3, Mr. City Manager, do we have need to go into executive session?
For personnel, yes, sir.
Do I hear a motion that we move into executive session?
I'll do it. I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matter pursuant to KRS 61.8101F.
We have a motion by Commissioner Holland. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cottle, thank you. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We are in executive session. Motion that we move back into regular session.
So move.
Motion made by Commissioner Terry, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Carver. We have no further business to come before this commission. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Holland, seconded by Commissioner Terry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Have a good evening.
Good to see you.